don't know. What up, friends? How you doing? You been writing music lately? Yes or no? Been getting those gigs? Making that money? Hope you are. Hope y'all are doing okay. So today we're going to talk about Counterpoint. And I guess I'll start by saying that I have never really cared about Counterpoint. I did learn it, as I'm sure many of you did. You know, in school, you learn the rules of Counterpoint. You know, you can't have some certain interval happen between two lines. You know, you can't approach one note a certain way when this note is doing something else. I learned all the different types of counterpoint, your first species counterpoint, second species counterpoint, so on and so forth. I'm getting so bored just thinking about it. And to be honest, I just kind of took all of that and put it over here in like a little bin labeled not relevant. Because I don't find it to be relevant now, and I don't think about it when I write music. I don't think about all of these strict rules of counterpoint. I suppose there is some historical value in knowing that composers used to write music this way, but I find it very restrictive and very mathematical and just not useful. And so what I've done in my head is just sort of reduced it down to almost nothing, but it's really this. It's this idea of melodies versus counter melodies. And so, you know, when you have a melody, you're probably going to have parts of that melody which are busier, meaning there's more notes happening, there's more changes happening, and then parts of that melody which are less busy, maybe sustained notes or you know, whatever, you're repeating the same note. And when a melody becomes less busy, I then try to introduce another element, or another melody rather, which is more busy to keep it busy, right? That's all it is, right? And you can find this in plenty of examples through all sorts of music. If you just find a random score reduction on this channel and look at it, you'll see this happening where you've got a melody, and when there's a sustained note, maybe there's some kind of Woodwind Run or some kind of counter melody happening in the horn just to kind of keep things moving, keep the energy going. And that's it. That's all I think about when it comes to contrapuntal writing, right? It's like just filling in the blanks and keeping things moving. Maybe you don't think about it like that, and that's okay. I'm certainly not here to tell you to think one way or the other. I'm 23, and so, you know, like, don't listen to me. But actually, I'm not even here to talk about counterpoint in a musical sense necessarily. What I want to talk about is counterpoint in the way that a film score interacts with the film, okay? So you can think about it like this. In a film, you have the soundtrack, right? And that's not just the music, but it's also the sound effects and the dialogue. And those are all, those elements are all competing on the frequency spectrum. That is what we hear when we watch the movie and presumably listen to it. And something you have to realize about that is, you know, those elements are all sort of, in a way, competing for our attention. And you have to know, if you're writing a score, when to sort of duck out and when to come back in and guide our attention a little bit. And it ends up working out a lot like counterpoint, at least in the way that I see it, as I mentioned before, where, you know, if there's something busy going on, your counter melodies are going to be less busy. And if your melody, you know what I said, freaking rewind the video. And so I could try to explain it further right now, but I think the best course of action is for us to just jump in and watch it in action. And so today we're going to watch some Revenge of the Sith, okay? For no particular reason other than I just want to watch Revenge of the Sith because it's a pretty dope movie. So let's just jump in here, and I'm going to show you the opening scene, the Battle over Coruscant. So one sec. Okay, so before we jump into this, I want you to, as you watch this, consider where your attention is going. Okay, so obviously this is a huge spectacle in the film, this opening battle sequence. We've got ships flying all over the place. We've got blasters and explosions, lots of stuff happening. And so it's this grand spectacle. And obviously the visual is going to dominate your attention in a lot of ways. But I don't want you to think about that. I want you to instead think about what's happening in the soundtrack, meaning, again, music, sound effects, and dialogue, and where your attention goes purely auditorily. Auditorily? Auditory. No. Shit. Wherever your mind goes, wherever your ear goes as you're watching this, I want you to pay attention to that and maybe consider why as we go through this, and I'll try to explain as much as I can. Okay, so first off, think about the sound effects for a second. So there's nothing happening really in the sound effects. You've got these ship sounds, but nothing crazy. We can see the ships. We know that the ships are moving. We can see that. The actual sounds of the engines are not that important to us. And so John has sort of taken the opportunity to step forward and play us this epic iteration of the Force theme, which we all love, and sort of take the stage a little bit. At least that's where I keep pointing to my head, but at least that's where my ear went listening to this, it went straight to that theme. And maybe I'm a bit biased because I study film scores so much. But again, even if your ear went somewhere else, I just want you to be aware of that and start thinking about why. And also one more thing. So check this out. In the beginning, we have these taiko hits, right? It sounds like taikos. And then the Force theme starts up just as the ships fly past the screen. But it doesn't start when they fly past the screen because we have this big sound. And the Force theme doesn't start until after that sound is dissipated. Okay, check this out. Right? Okay. Don't want to compete for that. We're going to let that whoosh sound happen, and then the Force theme is going to come in. Okay, very important. I think it would be very easy for someone to look at that and think, this is an important moment when the ships fly past, and try to nail it timing-wise right on that, downbeat when the ships fly past the screen. But the impact is almost greater when you wait that extra second for the sound to die down. Okay, so I just want to take a minute and let's just appreciate John's ability to sync and add all of these sort of things into the music that just makes it all blend together so well, right? The ship does this little maneuver and we get the woodwind runs. And then the climax of the melody of the theme hits right when we get this grand view of the carnage that's happening below. I think that's so cool. And also you'll notice the thrusters of the ships, whatever you call them, they come in right after that climax note of the horns. It's like just after. Okay. So check this out. So first we have this woodwind run that goes up and that happens again right after the ship has whooshed past us. Well, I hope this is making sense so far, and I think there's going to be a few moments here where it starts to click for you, and I want to let that happen. Right here, I love this, by the way. The trumpets do their little, so they have this pattern going, right, where they're going. And then the horns go bum 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 bum, right? And then it repeats, okay? So I love this right here, the second time that pattern repeats. The trumpets go, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then right after they do their little staccato thing, the blasters here on the right go, pew-pew-pew, sort of almost answering the trumpets. So cool. Right here. Again, completely avoiding, if they would have happened at the same time, might have been a little weird. So, oh God, he's so good. And so what I'm trying to get at here is, in the same way that you have a melody and a counter melody, just purely in a musical sense, and you try to balance them in such a way that, again, when this is less busy, this becomes busy. When this is not so busy, this becomes busy, and so forth. You want to balance those two and not have them compete. The music is interacting with the film in a very similar way, where when you have these big sound effects, the music needs to sort of balance and act appropriately and make sure that we're not competing. So, but it will start to get really interesting here when the dialogue happens. It should be right there. Again, right there, we have that pattern going between the trumpets and the horns when the horns kind of answer the trumpet going bum, 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 bum. And the second time it happens, we have this big explosion, which, not just as it dominates as a sound effect, but also dominates the screen. This huge explosion. And those horns, which are very much in the same frequency range as that explosion, or at least partially, the horns don't come in until after the explosion is dissipated. Now we have this big buildup.
Lock onto him, R2. Master.
Okay.
General.
This is where it gets interesting. So we have our first dialogue of the whole movie, right? Anakin sort of giving these instructions. And the music, so smooth. We have this nice transition down into sort of something a little calmer there, just for a second, to let us know we're kind of switching gears. So we've got this big build up, and then
Lock onto him, R2.
And now those horns would be competing for Anakin's voice, but they dip out, and we switch to this kind of high-pitched ostinato kind of rhythmic figure in the winds and the high strings, which are, if Anakin's voice is right here in the frequency spectrum, like this is low, this is high, right? And his voice is here. We've got our high woodwinds and strings here. And so they're not competing now. And that's important.
Master, General Grievous's ship is directly
now we can
ahead.
hear very clearly what Anakin's saying.
Vulture droids. Oh, I see it. Oh, this is going to be easy.
And so, okay, so Anakin and Obi-Wan, they have this back and forth. They're giving instructions, blah, blah, blah. And we can hear them. We can totally understand what they're saying because the music is ducking out of the frequency range of their voices. And it allows us to focus in and know, okay, this is the thing, this is the prominent thing that's happening that I need to really pay attention to. It also happens to be louder than everything else because the mix is bounced, whatever. You guys all know that. But the music changes and it takes the forefront again after the dialogue is over. Like a second after it, okay? So Obi-Wan gives this command. Let's go back.
General Grievous's ship is directly ahead.
The one crawling with vulture droids. Oh, I see it. Oh, this is going to be easy.
Okay, so not a command. He just says this is going to be easy. And then we have this kind of split-second reaction time for the audience to react to and go, oh, yeah, this is going to be easy. And the music reacts sort of at the same time that the audience is reacting to it. Okay, it doesn't react to Obi-Wan's thoughts. Like, he thought before he said this is going to be easy. He thought in his head, this is going to be easy. Okay? And, John could have played that, right? But he didn't. He let Obi-Wan say this is going to be easy. And then we as an audience react to that, and the music reacts with us that split second after. And it's so satisfying, right? And it also allows all the dialogue to happen, and then for our attention to go, okay, dialogue's over. Now we're going to switch to the music, okay?
Oddball, do you copy?
Copy, Red Leader.
Mark my position. Form your squad up behind me.
We're on your tail, General Kenobi. Set his foils in attack position.
Okay, so that was an interesting case because we went back into that rhythmic pattern with the winds and the high strings again. But actually, we went into it before Obi-Wan started talking, kind of anticipating that he's about to talk again, which is a very nice continuity thing because we know that last time it happened, Obi-Wan was talking, and then it happens, and then we go, oh, okay, dialogue's about to happen again, maybe subconsciously or maybe not at all. But it's just so, oh God, it's so good the way that it all fits together.
This is where the fun begins.
Let them pass between us.
Okay. So this is it for this. I'm going to move on to another scene real quick. But I think you get the idea, being that now, you know, I think it's often said, or at least I'm pretty sure I've heard it said before, that in music, melody is king, right? I think someone said that. Melody is king. Melody king? No. Quincy Jones, melody is king, and don't you ever forget it. Okay, well, forget it, right? Because if melody is king, then dialogue is like the god, you know? Like, or whatever's a step up from king. I'm not an expert on monarchical hierarchies, but we'll just say it's God, okay? So like you've got to let the dialogue happen. You've got to get out of the way. It's in almost every case, it's important for the audience to hear the dialogue, unless there's some artistic reason to not hear it, right? And so back to my point at the beginning when we were talking about counterpoint as a musical concept, I kind of see the dialogue as being like a melody that needs to be sort of, you have to almost arrange around. It's very much an arranging thing, you know? It's arranging not just in a musical sense, but you're sort of arranging the musical spectrum of the film or arranging around it, you know? So you've got all these explosions happening, and it's like when there's a big boom in the mid-range, you know, you can go down here or you can go up here, or just wait until it's done to kind of come in and do something. But it's very much a, you know, knowing what the focus is. So you've got dialogue happening, that's a huge focus, and you know you have to dip under, be kind of less busy, or get out of the frequency range or whatever to let it happen. So I hope you're understanding this. I hope this is making sense. I want to just go to one more scene while we're here watching this film, and we can kind of laugh at the terrible acting that is in the prequels. So let's go to the scene where Padme...
Good grammar and spelling are
on.
important. But if you want to write essays that inspire,
I don't.
messages that forge brighter connection.
Okay. Take a little zip. Okay, so I just want to do this again very quickly, just to give you another example of it. But I would highly recommend to just go watch some of your favorite films and sit down and pay attention to this. Like, very much pay attention to where your attention goes as far as the audio goes, and then ask yourself why, and you know how the film score composer, you know, reacted and sort of adapted the music to what was happening in the soundtrack. So for those of you who don't know, spoiler alert, Anakin becomes Darth Vader, and this is kind of where he starts to do that, and Padme is like, oh no, I love you, and you know, it's great. I actually love it. So right here, the music is taking prominence. We have these grand melodies because just ship sounds. You know, we can see the ship. We know that the engine's making a sound. We don't care. So the music is very much dominating. Ship settles down. Now Padme is becoming very introspective, but nothing's happening. She's not saying anything, so John takes the opportunity to play Padme and Anakin's theme. I'll shut up for a second. now it's going to start to die down as soon as they meet up and start talking to each other, because that becomes very important, what they're saying to each other.
I was so worried about you. Obi-Wan told me terrible things.
What things?
He said...
Okay, so now we've gone from this very busy melody, and the strings, I think earlier, is very much kind of going all over the place, jumping around a lot. We've gone from that now to basically just chord pads, just sort of letting the harmony tell the story and act as a bed, a bit of a pulse happening, just to keep things moving, but it really allows us, to focus on the dialogue.
To the dark side? That you killed younglings?
Oh no.
Obi-Wan is trying to turn you against me.
He cares about us.
So notice too that, we do have this pulse happening in these chord pads, and they are changing, ever so slightly, but the changes are happening in between the spaces of the dialogue. So Padme will say something, and there will be a little bit of a space before Anakin reacts or before she continues talking, and in those spaces is where those chord pads change.
He knows. He wants to help you. Anakin, all I want is your love.
Love won't save you, Padme.
Only my new powers can do that.
At what cost? You're a good person. Don't do this.
I won't lose you the way I lost
Still very much letting those chords change in between the dialogue.
Jedi has ever dreamed of, and I'm doing it for you, to protect you.
Come away with me. Help me raise our child. Leave everything else behind while we still can.
Don't you see? We don't have to run away anymore. I have brought peace to the Republic. I am more powerful than the Chancellor. I can overthrow him. And together, you and I can rule the galaxy. Make things the way we want them to be.
Make things the way we want them to be. Okay, so this is a very cool moment. So Anakin goes on a power trip, right? And Padme, being his lover, is understandably not happy about this. And so here we have this gap where he says this, we can, accomplish our dreams, and I forget what he just said. And there's a pause because Padme, I guess, doesn't know what to say. And in that pause, we introduce this sort of descending chromatic string motif, okay? And that motif starts to repeat, but it starts in this gap and it doesn't repeat again until the next gap. Check it out. I'll rewind it just a couple seconds.
I don't believe what I'm hearing.
Right, another gap.
Obi-Wan was right.
Another gap.
I don't want to hear any more about Obi-Wan.
Melody and counter melody, right? Melody being Padme's dialogue, and then the counter melody being that chromatic descending string motif, okay? Balancing it, keeping things moving but not masking each other, right? Very cool. John Williams is so
Jedi
good.
turned against me. Don't you turn against me?
I don't know you anymore. Anakin,
You're breaking my heart.
breaking my heart.
Oh no.
You're going down a path I can't
It's okay,
follow.
Padme. You can date me.
Because of Obi-Wan.
Because of what you've done. What you plan to do. Stop. Stop now. Come back.
So now it gets very cool because it sort of becomes less about what they're saying to each other, because it's very obvious what's happening, and it's kind of the most predictable dialogue in history. It's like now Padme is crying, like just kind of starting to weep, and we know what that means. And Anakin looks very like visibly frustrated and like about ready to kick Obi-Wan's ass. And so like it becomes less about what they're saying now, and so the music starts to get a little more intense, a little more busy. And then
I
he
love
says,
you.
yeah, like,
Liar!
liar.
No.
You're with him! You brought him here to kill me!
No.
Let her go, Anakin! Let her go!
Okay, so I reckon you get the point by now. I'm not going to play any more of this. Go watch Revenge of the Sith, and also whatever other film you want to sort of start thinking about this for yourself and finding some more examples of this. You know, we were talking about arranging earlier and how this sort of all is just one big arranging trick of arranging not just the music, but the relationship between the music, the sound effects, and the speech. And I read this book a while ago, which some of you may have already read, called Arranged by Nelson Riddle. And if you don't know who Nelson Riddle is, he's a, or was rather, a world-class arranger. I mean, come on, dude. Guy did arrangements for like Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald and loads of the jazz singers, and you know, famous for a lot of these big band arrangements and orchestral arrangements. And so he wrote this book, and I would highly recommend you read it. But there's a section in here about film scoring, which kind of took me by surprise. I was not expecting that, and it's very much relevant to what we're talking about today. So he says in this book, let me find the quote. He says, "The approach to music written for underscoring dialogue in a film is not unlike writing vocal background for a singer. You should be careful to thin out orchestral textures and try to write longer, less busy lines when someone is talking." So again, it's like what we were talking about when Anakin and Padme are having their back and forth. The orchestra sort of dims down to this just chord pad, right? Just sustained notes, not anything super busy. Way of managing dialogue as you sketch would be to indicate its placement and duration by a thin line above the stave like so. And I'll show you what he's shown here. So you'll see there's a staff there for the music, and he's drawn a line above the music to represent when the dialogue happens in the film. And I actually took this and started doing it myself back when I was doing some more films and during my studies in university. And I found it very helpful, and I would recommend doing that yourself. And if you're someone who doesn't like to sketch it out, write down your music, which I would also recommend you do. But again, I'm 23, maybe you don't want to listen to me. If you're someone who likes to work more in the DAW, you can actually kind of adapt this to the DAW, and I did for a few projects where I would actually have a dedicated track in the template for the vocal track, and I would actually create empty audio regions or like empty MIDI regions to represent when the dialogue was happening, just to sort of, again, visually see when the dialogue is happening and know when to dip out when putting the music together. So just something that I imagine might be helpful to some of you in incorporating all of these concepts that we're talking about into your work, assuming that, you are actually doing work in this field, and maybe you're not. But anyway, that's it. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope, maybe you learned something, or, it was perhaps mildly entertaining to you. I don't have a lot more to say. If you have any questions, let me know. Definitely go like the Facebook page for Film Score Analysis. Been posting a lot of film score reduction snippets over there, way more than I post on this channel, although I am trying to create more videos. Just haven't slipped into a consistent schedule that I can work with. That's my fault. If you're not already subscribed, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you on the flip side, my dweebs. Thanks for watching. Kisses.
It's baby time, baby time. Baby, you're the best. You're not like all the rest. It will be so much fun when you're the chosen one. No matter what you do, I will be proud of you, even if you receive a liberal arts degree. Baby time. It's baby time. Wait, I wasn't finished.